Hey people on the internet! I've been kind of curious to make videos for some time now, so I just decided to start today. Actually, maybe I just needed a reason to get dressed again every day. Anyways, I wanted to make this kind of like a vlog style thing, just show you around what I'm doing, and today we'll be making a coat. And to be more specific, we're gonna make this man's coat, because I like it and I wanted to have it, so that's what we're gonna do. So the thing is, this coat is actually quite simple to make. It's just a straight coat. But I also won't treat this as a tutorial because the thing is, I forgot how to sew coat bands or the coat slits at the back of it. And I also don't know how to sew a detachable fur collar, so we can go figure that out together. Isn't that nice? Usually people would start these videos showing you the fabric and everything they got, but I don't have all of my fabric yet because it's gonna be my Christmas present and it's not Christmas yet. So I'm gonna show you what I have right now, and I'm also gonna start making the lining. What I also did for this coat was make a mock-up to see if it fits, and I can show you that as well, because that's what my mock-ups usually end up looking, and basically you gotta be creative with those. And what I did with this jacket is check how far open I want it, because it has to do with some sewing things and you need to put a button here. Yeah, so that's basically everything I have to work with. Like I said, today we're gonna start with the lining. And the thing with the lining was, they didn't have the right color. And I wanted to have a quilted lining because first off, that's what was in the picture. And secondly, I'd like to actually be able to wear that coat. Wanted to be warm. All that's left for me to do was to make my own quilted lining. And I did that before. I regretted every second of doing that. But I'm really dedicated, so I'm gonna do it again. And for that, I got myself this grey polyester fabric that has the color that I wanted it to be. And I also got actual quilt padding just in a lighter color so it won't shine through. Yeah, what we're gonna now have to do is cut out the pattern pieces from both of those and sew them together again. This is gonna take hours. So let's get started. So the first thing that I did was place all of the pattern pieces onto the floor. I have a very nice table actually, but I prefer to become a little gremlin that I actually already am at heart and crawl on the ground. I also realized I made a mistake and placed the 2 back pieces, but that would have given me 4 back pieces since I doubled the fabric. And no one has 2 backs. I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming. Then I took some pins, pinned it on, and after that I took a ruler and marked the 1 centimeter seam allowance, as I never make my patterns with a seam allowance included. And yes, I made this one myself, but I currently don't have the pattern books that I used to make this, but if anyone wants to know that, I will have a reason to order them. And then finally, you can cut out your pattern pieces. But don't use small scissors. Use the big scissors. Make your hands suffer because they're heavy. Can we also please appreciate my socks? My grandma hand knits them and they're my favorite thing. I have a lot of them. And here you can see all of the pattern pieces you need for the quilted part of the lining. 2 per sleeve, the front and the back. Though the back isn't done because for the coat slit you need 2 different pieces. I just cut the one that will be straight at the end, but you also need one that has the vent cut in it, but I will explain that later on. Then you need your polyester that has the color that you want. I'm talking like anyone would do that. Please don't. Anyways. You want to cut out the pieces one by one. Cut them approximately to size first, then make sure the fabric is laying correctly. You want the left side, so the uglier one, of the poly to lay on the good one of the quilt fabric, so you don't cover up the padding, because I think that what traps heat and makes the stuff warm. But don't ask me though. I only studied fabric, so how am I supposed to know? Then make sure to pin it tightly onto the fabric so there isn't any puckering or you have some real ugly quilting. And you don't want that. You don't want any quilting. But then you cut it down to size, because that will make sewing easier. Okay, now that's your finished lining piece, and first I'm gonna sew closely around the edge just to secure the 2 fabric pieces together, and then I start quilting. Oh no, my machine is acting up again. You know those days when you just want to sew, finish or work on your projects, and then you have to play mechanic and screw your whole machine apart? That was one of those days. And I also know what's up. There's like this stupid spring that somehow locks itself and gets stuck, and usually poking it with a screwdriver helps, or putting on some oil, but this time it didn't. And I'm kinda mad about that because I had that machine serviced not too long ago and now it broke. So I angrily slapped it back together and placed it in front of the heater to get the oil to warm up a little more, because last time that helped, but it needed to be gone, to make space for the superior machine that I got from my grandma. And yes, this one is as heavy as it sounds. It's quite fancy actually and got top and bottom transport, which I never used before. And I don't know how to use it. But luckily I was able to find the manual for it online, even though the thing is like 50 years old or something. And the pictures were horrible, but I got it to work, which was amazing and made me happy. I was always too scared to work with it, fearing I would break it, and I switched it on and it worked perfectly. So the first line I sewed was all around the pieces, securing the fabric together. And listen to that, that sounds like a perfectly working machine. Maybe screaming for some oil, but working, unlike someone else. And you. I hate you. Just stay there. Don't talk to me ever again. But now we will be going back to our new best friend. Just keep sewing and sewing, all around. And once you did that, you need to mark the quilt lines. I first only marked 2 as I saw my grandma's machine also got a quilting ruler, but I lost the part that connected it to the right foot, and it was too short anyways. So I had to mark them all. I chose 6 cm width for that one. And then you will just start sewing line after line after line. Use up 2 bobbins, but one day you'll be done. And at this point I couldn't avoid figuring out the back anymore, but I was kindly given a model when I was in uni from someone that knew what they were doing. So here I'm just trying to put it together how it belongs. The lighter pieces of paper are the lining, the darker are the outer fabric. And I just like having things lay in front of me, as I never know which one is left and which one is right. So I put it with the lining facing towards me and then laid the lining pieces in front of me the same way. And I'm proud of my brain for doing that correctly and not flipping anything. I would only have been able to check that if I had the outer fabric as well, which I still didn't at this point. So my brain did a pretty good job here. And then it came to the scariest part of actually cutting the piece away. I put down my pattern piece, making sure the seam allowance was right and it wasn't crooked. Then I took a pen, marked it, and then finally, after some more hesitation and some more checking, I cut it away. And then it was too late for regrets, if there would have been any. And I finished quilting all of those, and now I can finally start seaming the thing together. And if you thought that was boring, imagine me, who had to do that for 7 hours. But first I also used this weird fabric brush thing to get rid of all of the chalk marks, because it's a good idea to iron the finished quilted pieces, and you don't want the chalk to stain, not like that ever happened before. And then I started with the sleeves. I decided to make those out of 2 pieces, since I just like doing that for coats, since they just end up fitting better. First I close the shorter seams. Just throw them under your machine and hit the gas pedal. Don't sew over your fingers though. Then I ironed the allowance towards the shorter piece and then sewed the other seam. Then I iron the whole sleeve, and for that it's handy to have a tiny little sleeve ironing board. And it's cute, and that's why I wanted to show it. Okay, so the sleeves are done and they kinda look very tight, which makes me a little worried, but we're gonna make do. And the next seam I closed was the back. And for that you also have to remember to close the movement seam at the bottom and the top. It's there because the lining needs to be bigger at the back to, well, allow for better movement, and you will regret making the lining the same size as the outer fabric, so just don't. I have just realized a great mistake. This isn't the complete lining, and you cannot close the shoulder seams before you didn't sew in the facing with the right fabric. But the good thing is, it's after Christmas now, so I have my fabric, and I can go show you that right. Finally, my outer fabric. A facing for the front is added so you don't see the lining fabric straight away when the coat is worn open. Back facing so the lining won't poke through the collar, and I have the actual collar piece with me as well. First I put in the back facing, and since it's very curved you need to be careful when pinning it. I marked the middle first with a pin, and it's also a bit weird because usually you would do that before seaming the sides together. I just had more fabric to shove under my machine, but that was all. And I really learned how nice a top fabric transport is with curved seams like that, nothing worth flipping or moving around. The next thing that you need to do is clip the seam allowance. That just allows it to lay flat when ironing it, what you should be doing. Then I sewed in the front facing the same way, also clipping the curves. Okay, so I finished piecing all of it together and also closing the shoulder seams, and now all that's left to do is everyone's favorite part of adding the sleeves in. And you don't want to know the amount of times that I sewed sleeves in the wrong side. Yes, and that's why I spent hours looking for the markings that I was supposed to transfer from the pattern onto my fabric pieces that indicate where to clip what, and which side is the front and which side is the back. But guess who forgot? Well, from the looks of it, definitely not me. I even desperately stared at my paper pattern, trying to figure it out. And then I just decided to do something, improvising like usual. You will know if your sleeves are sewn in the wrong way, and you have your left sleeve in your right armhole when trying it on, so there's that. And then I just confidently started to pin them in. I started to just hold them together at the side seams, and that marking I luckily had. Right sides together, and not to turn them around before that, since that always ended up horrible for me. And once I had that secured, I flipped over the bodice and continued to pin them. Since the sleeves are always supposed to be bigger than the armholes, there will be some bunching. But if your pattern works out, then you can shove it in there somehow. And if all things fail, you can just use a needle and a thread and just gather it to the right size. And then you just sew them in. And I wish I would be that fast when I actually did that. Oh well, I can dream, right? Also make sure you sew from the side of the sleeve and not from the side of the bodice. And here you can see a nicely fitting sleeve, and now repeat that for the other one and you have a finished lining. Okay, so I'm completely finished with the lining now, yay! And I even got this collar piece sewn in, I just didn't record it because I had to figure out how to sew that in since it has two sharp corners. I will show you that with the outer layer fabric because I think I actually did a nice job for improvising again. And then the lining was finally done. And I forgot to take pictures of the whole thing, but you will see it again in the next part where I show you how I put the outer coat together. So I hope we'll see each other there as well. Have a nice day!